Presentation by Ken Galbraith, and we are going to be recording this teach-in tonight. So if you're worried about that, you don't have to be on camera if you don't want to. And we're going to mostly be showing the slides and things, but if you're worried about that, you can shut off your camera and you won't be part of the video. And then at the end, we're going to talk about next steps for both of these working groups. So at this point, let's see. Real quick, I'm going to come back to the slide at the end, but I just want to say it up top as well. These are the signups for both of the working groups. So if you do want to get involved in the future with either the climate or the housing justice working groups, you can go to la4.org/climate or la4.org/housing and sign up for those, as well as all our other working groups. You can sign up for a newsletter, learn about all the things we're working on. So yeah, at this point, I'm going to shut down my screen sharing and we're going to throw it over and introduce Chris.
And I think we're going to try to make Chris co-host. I'm not sure that it's letting me. Jason, you have his slides though, right? If you're able to. Oh, you're on mute?
I just said allow. He should be able to now.
Okay, great. Thank you. Chris is on mute. I don't actually see that, Jason, that he's allowed to. So if you could.
Give me a second to bring up his slide deck.
Oh, there you are.
Thank you. Yeah, it looks like I'm getting some kind of warning message.
Yeah.
While Jason is doing that, I'll just introduce myself, and it's hello everyone. It's nice to meet you. My name is Chris Ree. My pronouns are he, him. I am presenting as both a professional urban planner. My day job is working as a consultant with public sector clients on long-range climate change planning. And I am also a volunteer organizer with a grassroots organization called Urban Environmentalists LA. And this is very much aligned with our advocacy. Okay, great. Thank you, Jason. Let's go to the next slide. So Urban Environmentalists LA, or UELA for short, we're a grassroots organization championing smarter land use and transportation policies that reduce urban sprawl, preserve natural lands, and improve affordability and access. And a little bit more about me on the next slide. There's a little picture of me. Ooh, there we go. A little picture of me and my family. I'm a husband and dog owner. I talked about a little bit of my professional life. I'm also an advisor for the UC Berkeley Turner Center on Housing Innovation. They have a housing and climate working group. I am a second generation Korean American. I kind of want to note that my family immigrated to Koreatown in the 1970s, and it pertains to housing justice, the housing justice conversation, because their options for where to live were very limited at the time. And the practices of housing injustice still have an impact to this day. Nowadays, I live in Eagle Rock. This is a little photograph from a block party that was had on my street. I live in a small lot development. That is basically LA's version of a townhome. And this was a very deliberate choice. I wanted to live in some density where neighbors were able to connect and where I was able to bike to some daily destinations. And we have these little pockets of sustainable urbanism that are happening all over Los Angeles. And folks often kind of know about the notoriety of some of our sprawl in Southern California, but there are these solutions that exist everywhere. All right, we're going to start with just a super brief history about land use injustice in the United States, because I know folks maybe have more and less familiarity with housing issues. And the first slide I wanted to show here is a couple of maps from Richmond, Virginia. Are folks here familiar with the history of redlining. Do folks know what I mean when I say redlining? I'll just say, okay. I got a thumbs up from Godfrey. Won't talk about it too much, but just to say that, this is an example from Richmond, and on the left is the Homeowners Loan Corporation map from the 60s, and on the right is present day data on health and social indicators. The more red it is, the more burdened that community is by health impacts and lower incomes. And the maps look very similar. And you could do this for you could show the same maps for LA and you would see these impacts. Let's go to the next slide. So we know redlining is largely responsible for a lot of the housing discrimination that we experience in LA, but there were also a number of other tools that were used to uphold white supremacy. These included racially restrictive covenants that would have prevented families like mine from living in certain parts of LA. There were single detached homes that were made available to mostly white families. There were segregated public and private housing developments, the impacts of urban renewal, really locking folks into car-centric design, and wealthy neighborhoods opposed apartments, which in many cases still do today. So I just wanted to sort of mention this up front because one of the impediments that we have towards having a more sustainable city in LA is that 3/4 of our land is still locked in single family zoning. You're only allowed to build a single family home. It can be giant, it can be a mansion, but you're not allowed to build apartments in so much of our city, and that creates a lot of issues. Let's go to the next slide here. So this next section, I'm going to say, what does that have to do with climate change? What does disinvestment and exclusion have to do with sprawl and climate change? And I'll invite a little bit of interaction on this next slide, where there are 3 photographs from around LA County. And I'll invite folks to say in the chat what you see in these photos that is maybe a little problematic from a climate change perspective. Think also about land use equity, and energy consumption. Yeah, Godfrey pointed out right away, manufacturing next to homes. And we see this is unincorporated Florence Firestone, which is one of our environmental justice communities. And this is, we see this across Los Angeles, right? And this is tied to redlining. People of color were not allowed to buy homes or not allowed to get mortgages in the quote unquote desirable parts of the city and region, and instead were forced to buy in places like this, where there was greater exposure to environmental burdens. Yes, on the right-hand side is Santa Clarita. This is an example of one of the communities in LA County which is growing. Where you see the most number of houses coming online right now are places like this that are at the edge of the region. You can see a large roadway that doesn't look very walkable because it prioritizes the car. And then the last one I'll touch upon is in the middle. This is Cheviot Hills, which is right next to the Expo line, but doesn't allow apartments. And that is the community that fought the Expo line when it was being built, now the E line, and also fights any proposed policies to introduce apartments to this neighborhood, despite it having very good transit access. This home is also quite large. It consumes way more energy for a single family than is typical for our city and region. And we see this often. Single family homes just consume more. They produce more waste. And it's as compared to the rest of us on the whole. Okay, let's go to the next slide here. And this is like a make-believe island. And it's this question of if you were to build homes for 100 people, which one would you prefer? Thank you, Jason, for moving the cursor over to the right. So you can see here, like on the right is an apartment building, and if you build with some density, you're able to have land sparing. So there's a lot more space that's left over for natural land. And on the left is the single family. If you build a single family home for everyone with their own private backyard, it is there's no common space left. It also breaks up habitat. It's not possible for large animals to be able to cross through fenced backyards. There are a lot of reasons why the why this is less desirable. So let's go to the next slide here. And so that was a hypothetical. This is the real life choice that we have in terms of providing homes. When, let me see how to put this. Homes are going to be built in our region when there is demand. And it's not a question of if. That's the way that the market works. It's a question of how and where. And so right now in California, about 100,000 new homes are built every single year, and 45% of those are this image on the left. They're built at the fringe of the region. It's very low density. It's also in what we call the wildlife urban interface. It's that edge that butts up against natural lands that tends to be much more prone to wildfires as a big concern. And the alternative is on the right, building with density. This is an actual development that's been proposed in Hollywood at the site of a Toyota dealership that is being sold. It's been approved and is moving forward. And this is what we call infill development because it's filling in the gaps in the urban landscape. We can take underutilized parcels, parking lots, and other brownfield sites, which can be cleaned. Brownfield is a contaminated site that can be cleaned up and redeveloped for housing or commercial or other uses. And this is there's a lot of benefits to infill from a climate perspective. We are using existing infrastructure. We don't have to build new roads and water pipes and sewer pipes and power lines in order to service a new area. We can make use of what we already have. And as mentioned before, it's just much more land and energy efficient. Let's go to the next. So this is some data that shows the carbon footprint of a typical household in different regions across the country. And green is good, red is bad, and the pattern is the same everywhere. Basically, the further that you go out from the city center, the more energy that the household consumes and the more emissions that they produce. This is both because of the size of the home as well as the transportation energy that's needed to commute to job centers. This 1.5 figure, interestingly, is already adjusted for differences in income. If you take that out, it's actually the difference is even worse. It's about 3 to 4 times more emissions per household at the fringe as opposed to the urban core. Let's go to the next slide here. This is a similar map, different color scheme, but similar map that zooms in on central Los Angeles. And what I want to show here is that we do have low carbon neighborhoods all over Los Angeles. And some examples of these are Hollywood and Koreatown and downtown LA and Culver City. And these are these are the places where you can walk to destinations. You can walk to the grocery store. You can pick up your mail. You can go walk to the dry cleaners. And this really helps keep the household emissions down. These are also the places generally where apartments are allowed to be built in LA. If you look at the Hollywood Hills, they're all orange because they are single family homes on large lots that require folks to drive to their jobs and to their other destinations. Um, so there's this question of, if we are going to add more homes, where should it be? And from a climate perspective, it makes a lot of sense to be building in the places where that have the infrastructure, that have the ability for people to live very low carbon lives. Let's go to the next slide. Okay, so I believe that, so I'm pretty much talking about just the choices of where and how we build our housing. Of course, there are other decisions that affect the carbon footprint of a home, the appliances and the vehicles and everything. But what I wanted to show here is that take a look at this graph on the right, which is the amount of emissions that are produced per kilometer or mile for different modes. Walking produces nothing. It's the most carbon-free option, and a regular bicycle is not far behind. And then you work your way up, and transit is also a very good option. An electric car, which a lot of folks kind of turn to as a climate solution, is part of the solution. It has a half the emissions on a lifetime over the course of its lifetime than a gasoline vehicle, but it still produces a lot. So um, I would much rather see, as an urban planner, as a climate professional, I would much rather see more energy efficient homes being built in transit and transportation efficient locations, rather than just saying, oh, we'll just do 100% solar, call it net zero, and give everyone an electric car. That has actually been some of the conversation around some developments like Centennial Ranch around the region. But it's really important that we continue to think about location efficiency. Okay, let's go to the next. Um, and I am kind of picking on Santa Clarita here to just show what the breakdown is of emissions per household. But sub Santa Clarita with Victorville or San Bernardino, or other of these exurban, which is the fringe communities, and the footprint looks very, very similar. This is a tool that's produced by UC Berkeley that shows the typical household footprint. And these are not on the same axis. So if you take a look at, let's look at the one on the right first, which is Santa Clarita. You can see that travel is actually a huge portion of their household footprint. The energy in the home is, the next one here. Food, goods, and services rounded out. And then on the left, the food doesn't change between these locations. So if you take that, if you imagine that line is the same, you can see that actually LA, the travel is actually much more compact. Even though we do have a bit of car dependence here in LA, it's much better to be in central LA than it is to be in Santa Clarita from an emission standpoint. And you can see some of the other sources of emissions here. Okay, I'll pause there and we can always come back, but let's yeah, why don't we move forward and we can always come back. So how can we pursue access to these opportunities to live in these low carbon neighborhoods? And particularly think about how we open up for marginalized groups who have not had the same access historically and currently. We really need to be thinking about displacement protection alongside these conversations about how we change land use in our city and region. But we can't just stick with we also can't just stick with the status quo because it's not working. And we are in a situation where a lot of Angelenos aren't able to afford homes in the places that they would like to live. So on the last few slides here, I have just a few bullet points about some areas of opportunity for advocates to consider as we think about these issues. And these little illustrations here are taken from a white paper that urban environmentalists developed with a number of other NGO partners. I'll put a link on it at the end. And this is what we describe. One is to upzone residential areas, particularly those that are near jobs and transit in historically exclusionary areas, like those Cheviot Hill types of neighborhoods. On the left, here's another illustration. It's similar to the island in showing that you can fit many, many more apartments and house more families if building apartment buildings with density than in the 4 single-family homes that are shown on the bottom portion. The second bullet point here is that there are many housing types that are not allowed to be built by law. These include what we call single stair buildings. These are apartment buildings that have a single stair that can be skinnier than the very, very large ones that are forced to be built under current regulations now. And SROs, single room occupancy buildings, which historically were very low cost hotels. But they allow more types of options for different family situations and needs. And then finally, actions to make it faster and easier to build accessory dwelling units and other types of missing middle housing. Missing middle is everything between a single family home and an apartment building. So that could be a duplex, a triplex, a quadplex. It can be the small lot home that I live in, or it can be like a bungalow court. All of these types of housing, which already exist in LA, are largely not allowed to be built under current law. So these are all some things that we can do to help introduce some more density where we need it in LA. Let's go to the next slide. Of course, supporting walking, biking, and public transit. Housing and transportation go hand in glove. We can promote more transit-oriented development, which just means building housing near transit. And then also think about other transportation actions we can support. Bus-only lanes and rail investments, protected bike lanes, and also having safer sidewalks and crosswalks so that it's not just the proximity to destinations, but also you should be able to feel safe and comfortable while walking on the sidewalk. The second bullet point is eliminating parking requirements. So currently, in most jurisdictions in the LA region, you're required to build a parking spot for every apartment or home, regardless of whether the person living or persons living in that home have a car. And this adds cost. This makes it more expensive. And the third, of course, I shouldn't have to say this, but we are still building more highways in California and diverting funding that could otherwise be used for public transportation infrastructure. So it's important for us to show up when these decisions are being made. And then next slide here. And the ecologists would like me to also, say that we can do it all here. We can have density, but also design for biodiversity by incorporating native plants in our landscaping, by including rainwater capture features, and by using nature-based solutions that provide habitat for our pollinators and other species on our properties and in public green spaces. And then another consideration is how we think about heat, urban heat. in LA. We can definitely think about native shade trees. I didn't list it here, but also there are considerations for when designing a building that are using reflective materials and other architectural features like awnings and the placement of windows and other features to reduce the heat impacts on building occupants. So let's support land use justice. This is urban environmentalists' vision. We want everyone to be able to afford to live in a safe, comfortable dwelling that's in a climate resilient location where you can walk or bike or otherwise access jobs, amenities, and green space and lower your carbon and environmental footprint. And we asked for climate advocates to help. And then on the last slide here, just thank you. I'll leave my contact information here. This is the cover page of the white paper that we prepared. Actually, it was in 2024 with a number of partners, including Sunrise Movement, Livable Communities Initiative, and the LA Climate Reality Project. Oh, yes. So you can download that with the QR link. I'll put the URL in the chat as well. And I think I'll pause there and see what questions you all have.
Yeah, so we can use the chat, or if people want to go off mute, they can. We're going to take a couple minutes for questions for Chris and then move on to our second presentation. But also, I'd love for people to just share in the chat, like, you don't also have to just ask questions, but also share any reactions or feelings you're having about this as well. Just anything that's might have brought up for you. So yeah, you can feel free to put that in the chat, or you can come off mute, raise your hand if you want to as well. So let me just see. Let me pull up the chat really quick. Godfrey has a hand raised.
I'll start because I also said that I was like a 1.5 in terms of climate, like at the beginning survey, and I feel like I'm still sharpening arguments to bring into the world to move us toward a place of more climate justice. This is more of a reaction as opposed to like a question. Um, one of the most radical, like light bulb moments I had a couple of years back was when you talked about electric cars and how electric cars are still that really long line on the chart that you showed in terms of not car like or cars in general anyway. Um,
Yeah.
and someone told me that we could individually adopt electric car culture as a mechanism to move toward fewer emissions, but it doesn't like even buying an electric car or moving toward that model perpetuates this like freeway centric kind of city that we live in. And imagine what would happen if we actually began to move away from any cars completely. Um, that space opens up. You actually don't need that. We could create both housing space, and green space. There are like just many other ways to use existing roadway. So I thought that was like a really light bulb moment for me. The other argument, of course, that I've heard in that is again, individually, we can move toward an electric car model. And that begins to like peel us away from being dependent on fuel and gas. But that's just like we're like a tiny grain of sand, and there's a giant like gas corporation that still continues to exist. And so we ought not to believe that our single choice, individual choice with electric car is enough either, I think is like the other kind of argument I've heard toward keeping an eye on like the larger, bigger picture. Like, okay, cool, electric cars, but then else, what else? What else? Like beyond that is something that was helpful to me.
So I do have a question here that's interesting. Let's see. Would you be able to speak to recent cuts to CEQA, stated reasoning being the red tape to developing abundance philosophy and how this may be harmful to our environmental justice communities, and the need to balance, housing development and protecting community health/climate. Can you speak a little bit to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So CEQA, and for folks who are not familiar with CEQA, is California's most important environmental protection law, and really was designed to make sure that when major industrial developments were coming online, that the impacts of water and air pollution and soil pollution weren't going to well, I wouldn't say weren't going to harm folks, but that their impacts were fully considered in the trade-offs that would come with new development. Um, Over time, it extended to all kinds of development in California, including housing. And I think that it plays an important role for really thinking about the environmental impacts of building on the periphery in places like Centennial Ranch. But the overwhelming academic consensus is that infill development in urbanized areas is an unequivocal good for from an environmental perspective, just no matter which way you slice it. There are going to be trade-offs, certainly, but it's always better than the alternative of sprawl. So there's been a pretty good consensus among environmentalists that infill development really it shouldn't be the target of CEQA. And that portion of it being exempt from CEQA is something that we supported as urban environmentalists, as did many environmental organizations, including ones much larger than us. The portion of CEQA that rolled back uh, protect or requirements for quote unquote advanced manufacturing facilities is a little suspect. We haven't completely wrapped our mind around it because that what constitutes advanced manufacturing hasn't really been very well defined. So that is not something that we have taken a position on. I will say as personally, that seems like exactly what CEQA was designed for and should probably have remained in place.
We have a few other questions, but I really want to make sure we leave some time for our other presentation. So thank you, Chris. This was great. If you want to stick around, if you're able to stick around till the end, we maybe have
Yeah.
time for more questions. But I want to get Ken in here as well, just to make a quick introduction. We met Ken a few weeks ago when we went and we toured the greenhouse, South LA, which he's going to tell you all about, which he's at right now. I can see.
Yeah.
So he's going to tell you all about it and what he's doing there. And we thought that's interesting because Chris talked to us about how, like, as a city, we can address some of these things, and Ken's going to talk to us like from a bottom-up, community-led thing, what we can do for the environment and housing. So go ahead, take it away, Ken.
Hi, my name's Kenneth Galbraith. Just a little bit about me. I'm a 30-year master electrician and contractor. Um, Together, my wife and I, we started the Greenhouse South LA, our nonprofit. Um, and we're very humble beginnings. We started electrifying many years ago, about 14, 15 years ago. We started electrifying one thing at a time. And it worked out so well, we just moved on to the next thing. And so when we had the opportunity to buy the house across the street, we started the greenhouse with the express intention to electrify this 100-year-old craftsman house. And that's how we got started with this. And our intention is basically to be a practical example to the community of how you can take a 100-year-old house and electrify it. And put the most efficient electric appliances in it and reduce or eliminate fossil fuel usage in the house. So I'm going to run through this pretty quickly in the interest of time, but my wife and I, we've started the greenhouse. My wife Wendy and I, we started the Greenhouse South LA. We're dedicated to growing climate resilience in South LA. We're a 501c3. Our mission, electrify South LA through community-led climate justice and home electrification. As I mentioned earlier, it's a 100-year-old house. fully electrified, fossil fuel free, excuse me. A community hub. We also have an after-school youth program here, and we use that program. It helps us to educate the youth about sustainability, energy efficiency, and helps us to basically connect with the community about such things better than we could do it ourselves. And on top of that, I personally have a workforce development program here where I emphasize that aside from a four-year college degree, there are other ways to make a very good living without college debt. And so I basically teach the kids basic hand tool skills and all the different trades that are out there. So can I have the next slide, please? Okay, our mission to electrify South LA. So trust is very big in our community. If our community does not trust us, they will not believe anything we have to say about clean energy, home electrification, getting rid of fossil fuel out of our houses in our neighborhood. So that's why we want to be a trusted community hub. Um, so we want to bring resources to our community while also developing the youth leaders who are the future and who are going to advance our environmental justice goals and implement clean energy solutions. And also they're going to be the workforce, the ones who build and maintain the clean energy solutions that will eventually take over all of our area in South LA. So we envision a South LA that's fully electrified, climate resilient, and economically empowered. Next, please. Okay, the problem we're addressing. South LA has long been left out of the clean energy revolution. We face higher energy bills, poor air quality, probably some of the worst in the nation, and limited access to clean energy programs. Most electrification efforts have traditionally focused on affluent areas, leaving our frontline communities behind. So the result is we have unequal economic opportunities, health impacts from pollution, and limited awareness of the available resources, especially electrification. So as you can see from some of the pictures, um, this is what we have to deal with. This is how many of our friends and neighbors, when their water heater goes out, they don't even go to Home Depot. They go to the neighborhood store, which sells the same old gas water heaters again and again. And many of them, I would say most of them, are not even aware of any of the electric heat pump water heaters or any of the efficient alternatives. Next, please. Our solution. Greenhouse South Los Angeles, we created it to change that narrative. We transformed the 100-year-old home. We have it as a practical example, a learning laboratory for electrification and sustainability. So we're a community hub where residents can actually come and visit and experience what it's like to be in an electric home and to see that it does work. And we provide ourselves as proof that it does work. We also have a youth-led after-school program that mentors young people in environmental and social justice, equipping them to be leaders in the green transition. So we provide them with hands-on clean energy workshops, and we also have rebate and incentive case management, mentorship for South LA youth and environmental and social justice advocacy, workforce training in high-demand clean energy jobs, and community resources and guidance for sustainable home upgrades. And as you can see in some of these pictures, we're showing our friends and neighbors. In one of the pictures, I'm showing them what a heat pump water heater looks like. And then in the picture to the left, you see us showing our friends and neighbors an induction range. And the one in the middle, we actually helped our neighbors replace one of their old window units and replace it with a high efficiency heat pump window unit. And so they can actually save money and have a better climate control in their house. Next, please. So workforce and green jobs pathways, also very important for us. So we believe that the youth are going to be the ones who lead this transition. The youth in this neighborhood are going to be the ones who lead the transition to clean energy, both with their leadership and with their technical skills. So we provide training in both in energy auditing, project coordination, green infrastructure assessment, and in basically the technical trades. We show them what it's like to be an electrician, solar installers, or an EV tech. Next, please. What we want from the city, county, and state. So what we would like to see is expand rebates for renters and multifamily housing, improve access to these the electrically efficient appliances, fund community-based training and youth apprenticeships, simplify and streamline applications for electrification programs, invest in community-owned solar and electrification products in South LA, and encourage utility trade-in programs for efficient electric appliances and rebate at point of purchase. One of the biggest obstacles we've seen is that you have to actually, to get any of the existing rebates, you have to wait till everything's completely installed before you or the contractor can get the actual rebate itself. If we had some kind of sort of program that had a point of purchase rebate, that would remove some of that obstacle for going electric. So if they had rebates for stoves or heat pump units at the point of purchase, that would be wonderful. We'd like more funding for community hubs and to ensure grassroots organizations like ourselves have a seat at the table when making policy and creating programs for our community. And the picture to the left here shows we were just recently in Germany, and contrast this picture to the picture of the water heaters that I just showed you a few slides ago. This is what a storefront looks like in Germany that sells electrical appliances. There's actually a solar panel right in the front display window. And this is how they think about their environment there compared to what we see in our neighborhood. Just in the store that has 100 old gas water heaters in it. So it's just an amazing difference, and we'd like to see some of that in our community. Next, please. Rebates on financial help. So these are just some of the rebate programs that we help our community members to make aware of and to take advantage of. Switches on, solar for all, and past rebates and tax credits. Brandon, with this administration now, some of those tax credits, or I'd say most of those tax credits have been taken away. But in the past, there's been hundreds to thousands of dollars available, and we've guided our friends and neighbors to get those rebates. So we help them apply with case management in English and Spanish and real one-on-one support. Next, please. So a few steps for a greener home. Start with the small things, the low-hanging fruit, the snowball effect. Start with that LED lighting. If you still have old lighting, replace it with LED lighting. Seal your windows and doors to cut drafts. Use smart power strips. Install low-flow shower heads and faucet aerators. And then once you've got all these low-hanging fruits to save energy, then think about maybe your window air conditioner is going out and you want to replace it. So consider replacing it with a heat pump, energy efficient window air conditioning unit. And then once you see that that works out, consider upgrading to a heat pump water heater. And that's a major step away from gas right there, because the gas water heater is the #1 consumer of gas in your house. Consider an induction range after that, and you'll see that it helps to cook faster and it eliminates airborne combustion products inside the house and fossil fuel usage from your house. Next, please. Thank you so much for inviting myself. Thank you for taking the time to learn about what we do here at the greenhouse. We hope that together we can continue building a future in South LA where the youth lead, innovate, and help shape a climate-ready city. We welcome and appreciate any form of support. If you know programs, incentives, funding opportunities, or tool donations that could benefit our youth, or you would like to volunteer. So please reach out. Hopefully there's enough time for questions. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you so much. So yeah, we have about 10 minutes or 9 minutes. So if anyone has questions, you want to put them in the chat for Chris or Ken, or you can raise your hand. We'd love to have that. Also, if just so anyone has reactions they want to share, you can share that as well. And we actually, a number of us got to go and tour the greenhouse and meet the youth. And so it was just really great getting to, see it in action and see, how they interact with the kids in the community. And like, I thought one of the greatest parts was just all throughout the day, more and more parents kept dropping off kids to the place, and they immediately got to work on some project or something. It was really great. They even showed us some advocacy they were working on with AQMD. So yeah, it was just a really cool experience and really inspiring. So yeah, are there any questions or comments anyone wants to share? And I can go back to and see if there were questions from before. Um,
Hmm.
let's see. Yeah, maybe I can prompt you for a question for
yeah.
what are some things that folks can do to reduce their emissions at home, and even if they're a renter.
I would say, um, like I mentioned earlier, a few slides ago, start with the small things, the low-hanging fruit, the the old lamps, replace them with LED. If you find a window or something like that that has a draft coming out of it, that's going to cost you more to heat your house or cool your house. Start with those things. And then once you get those things, and possibly the window heat pump unit is another thing that probably a renter can do by themselves. It's so easy. You can do it in a very short amount of time, and you can save so much energy and almost eliminate or very much reduce your gas furnace usage. But beyond that, then the renter themselves could actually ask their landlord, when's the next time you're going to replace the water heater? How old is the water heater? Do you think next time that, I would like to save some money on my utilities? Do you think next time you would consider a heat pump water heater the next time it's time to change the water heater? So put that in the landlord's mind ahead of time, and that way they can be prepared for that. And they might even think, well, that's probably a good idea. And then ahead of time, be prepared with information on possible rebates for the water heaters themselves. And that will help and even prod the landlord to say, okay, let's do that because it lasts longer and it saves the tenant more money. And it's good for the pocketbook. That's that's the end game for the tenant and the landlord, that it's good for their pocketbooks.
And something that was really stuck with me that you talked about when we had our tour there was this idea that like I think a lot of people feel like if they can't do it all, like it's not worth it. We just get frustrated, right? If you can't like solve all the problems at once. But you really talked about this idea that like, no, just start with something, replace
Mhm.
one window unit, the one you use the most, or replace the oldest thing, in your house with something new. And I just thought that was such a great idea because I think a lot of people think like, oh well, I'll save up someday for solar, or I'll do this, or I'll do
Yeah.
that, and some of those can be really expensive. We put solar panels and a battery on our house, and that was like a pretty big investment. But like that idea of like starting with something and starting to save money, and then moving on to the next thing maybe a year later when you have some more money again. I think especially with people like maybe getting tax returns coming up and the summer coming up, like maybe that's a great time to think about like what's one thing I could replace this year or something like that. What's like a low hanging fruit. I think that's just a really good mentality to have, because like every little bit helps, right? And moves us a little bit more towards our goal. So I think that's important.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely right, Jason. Because once you start with something small, you see that it works, and then you move on to the next thing. Because realistically, Most people are not going to do several things at once, or they're not going to go for the big ticket items like solar, or to a lesser extent, the heat pump, water heater. It's like, but once they see that these changes start actually saving them money and are actually good for their pocketbook, then they'll say, oh, okay, I'll consider the next most expensive thing. And then when they see that work, so it's kind of like a staircase where you're just stepping up. And so we found that that's the most effective approach, along with our youth, because since the youth are they're the future leaders, they will be most of this transition will be happening by them and with them and because of them. And because of that, we reach the youth, and those youth, their grandma is more likely to listen to them than to anybody else. And so, if they have all this wonderful information about how this equipment is efficient and it saves money and it helps reduce the carbon footprint of the area and reduce pollution, their relatives are much more likely to listen to them than to anybody else. And that's why they are the future, the youth. And that's why we believe strongly in that.
And the garage workshop you're sitting in right now, that was a project you did with the kids, right?
Yes, they helped build this workshop, and in this workshop we teach them basic hand tool skills. They helped me build the lighting. They helped attach all the attachments for the tools and the shelving on the wall. So without them, I wouldn't have been able to do this.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're coming up on time, and it doesn't look like there's any other question. Oh, there was one here. Maybe Chris could answer before we go. Someone asked, how should we think about best strategies to avoid displacement when we're looking at doing infill?
I'm not sure I'm going to be able to cover that in 1 minute,
Okay,
but
sorry. We'll have to bring you back.
yeah.
But good food for thought. All right. Well, I think we're gonna end there. We'll just stop recording. Want to give a big round of applause to Chris and Ken for coming and joining us. If you could, real quick, again, maybe put your emails or your websites in the chat in case people have any follow-ups they want to do. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Just a reminder to everyone that our housing justice group meets every week at 6 p.m. on Thursday, and we have upcoming teach-ins. Next week is going to be about rent control. And then our climate justice group meets every other Wednesday. So the next one is going to be 2 weeks from yesterday, and that's Wednesdays at 7 p.m. So thank you, everyone, and have a great night.